the downswing path test. So once that downswing path test evolved, and we'll look at it a little bit again today, it gave me an opportunity to go back and look at the golf swing and where does it begin. When I was in undergraduate school through graduate school, I spent 7 years in a learning lab. And then I went into the medical school and began to apply that learning in the context of what are called psychophysiological disorders. Everything from pain and all pediatrics in those days, pain in a pediatric burn patient, projectile vomiting, believe it or not, in a 4-year-old, and intervening and being able to use the environment to create changes. And to be able to do that backwards, you have to understand backwards chaining. Every behavior that is learned most efficiently backwards. Now, the best examples I can give you would be an infant. So if you have children and they're drinking, not breastfeeding, drinking from a bottle, you're holding the bottle. And over time, that infant begins to grasp the bottle, and then they anticipate and grasp the bottle. And pretty soon they're holding with one hand. And then as adults, we reach over and pick up a cup and we take a drink. That behavior was learned backwards. So that's called backwards chaining. It's the most efficient way to learn a behavior. When I was in school, and as I tell this story, I get a blank look from many players because of my age. We had an English class, we called it was junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. In English class, we had to learn poems, and we memorized one poem after another. So if you start with the last verse in that poem and you work backwards, it becomes very easy to go through. If you were to learn the first verse, the middle verse, the second verse, the last, you can imagine. So that is a chain that is not connected or not well connected. So as we learn, if you understand the links in a chain and you can build each link as you go, you have very efficient learning and great follow-up when you do. Now, when I got into the golf in the late 80s, this was on my mind. It's been on my mind for 30 years, 30 plus years. How the golf swing, where does it begin? How do we teach it backwards? What do we do? And the answer to that evolved in the last 18 months. And that is where the downswing path comes. So where do we begin? We began with a stance. And then we began with posture. Then we began with sequence of motion. And in there, we also have the dominant core zone. We want to understand that first, and then stance with, and then sequence of motion. And really, those are the first segment. Those are the first 3 links in the chain. Well, for behavior change to occur, we need to have a goal. If you talk to the tour players who came to see me in the 90s in particular, every year they filled out a goal sheet for that entire year. Your students coming in, you may say, what are your goals? They may, well, I want to be more consistent. I want to have more center face contact. I don't want to hit it right, or I don't want to hit it left, or whatever, or I want to putt better. But that tends to be set aside, was in my lessons in the years past, tends to be set aside. And we just continue to give the lesson. And they leave with, well, you're taking a little too far outside, you're taking it inside. We need to get you a little stronger with your left or right hand. And that's what they go home with. We'll have a goal sheet. Your students, if you want to see behavior change, they need to keep a diary of what they're working on. So it's not a lengthy diary. It's just a check mark. Did you work on your power spots today? Did you work on your sequence of motion? Are you working on, well, we're going to show you in a little while, how to use an alignment stick to teach balance. And so very important. Simple things that they can do. So understanding backwards chaining, understanding the importance of goals, and understanding giving your student a diary. So when they return, if you check it, if you don't check it, they're not going to do it. When they return, they have goals. They have something they have worked on that's relevant to what you're teaching. So that's where we're going to be. That's where we began. Also, every lesson, I don't know if Lori Rinker's on, but Lori remembers. I worked with Lori since the early 90s. She not only set annual goals, she had goals for every round she played. And there is a scorecard in an old version called the Mind Under Par scorecard, where you score your shot on a 1 to 10 scale, only recording your 8s, 9s, and 10s, your level of focus, and the overall shot rating, level of focus in the club you hit. You'll have access to that. That'll be online. I've written a couple of articles in Golf Magazine using that. But Lori used the back of that card where it said goals for the day. And I remember her telling me, only when I set my goals for the round do I play well. I said, I might play well, but I'll play better if I set my goals. So those goals are extremely important. So when you go out for the first lesson, some of you have a TrackMan, not all of you do. It's important for you to look at the wear on the face of the club when your student first comes out. Are they hitting it on the toe? Are they hitting it on the heel? Do they have good center face contact? I'm going to encourage you to use face tape and to have them have 5 or 6 shots before they do anything and rate each shot on a 1 to 10. 10's as good as they can hit it. I have forms we're putting together. You'll find them in the ebooks and we'll make them available to you online. And you'll be encouraged to use them. And I think you'll find your greatest success if you look at behavior change, whether you're looking at weight loss, exercise program. I did in my clinical practice, did what's called cognitive behavior therapy, teaching people who are depressed and anxious, understanding that those who are depressed reside mentally in the past much of the time, and those who are anxious reside mentally in the future. By simply keeping track of thinking occurs as a chain in a series of links. As soon as we can pull the link out of that chain, a link, and break that thought pattern, we can change behavior. So this becomes at a overt level. Chaining is very important as a learning process and very important as a teacher. My belief for you to understand. So a face tape, and then face tape being pulled off the club and put on the sheet, and then put in a file for your student so you have a reference. At the end of the first lesson, there is another 5, 6, you can hit up to 10 shots on this form. If you've seen Mind Under Par, my first book, and if you want it, all you have to do is ask. It's in digital form, but if you go to the visualization chapter of that book, these forms have been used for 30 years. And now we are at a point with the downswing path test and understanding how to start a lesson. And this is not labor intensive, by the way. It's very quick. You have a conversation. You put the bar on your students' hips after they've hit their shots, talk to them about their goals. I will have a version, a checklist of goals for you, for your students as well.